The house felt different that morning. Empty. Not just in the physical sense, though the shelves were bare, the walls stripped, but in a way that seemed to seep into the air itself. Mark stood in the center of the living room, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his jeans, staring at the blank space where the couch used to be. It was gone now, just like everything else. He hadn't planned it this way. Not exactly. But when he'd stumbled across the text messages, blurry in the dim light of the bathroom screen, he knew he couldn't just let it go. He couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. The messages were innocuous at first glance, but the timing was too deliberate, the tone too familiar. Emily, his wife of 10 years, and Jack, their next-door neighbor. It wasn't even subtle. Mark hadn't confronted her. Not directly. He'd let the silence stretch between them, thick and heavy, until it became its own kind of accusation. Emily had tried to fill it, of course. Chattering about work, about the weather, about nothing at all, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She knew something was wrong. And then he'd acted. The house sold faster than he'd expected. The market was hot, and the buyer, a young couple with dreams of starting a family, hadn't hesitated. The paperwork was signed, the keys handed over, and just like that, Emily was left standing on the front porch, suitcases piled at her feet, staring at him like she couldn't quite comprehend what was happening. "Mark," she'd said, her voice trembling. "What are you doing?" He hadn't answered her. Not with words, anyway. He'd just climbed into his car, started the engine, and driven away. The rearview mirror had shown her frozen in place, Jack emerging from his own house, confusion etched across his face. Mark had allowed himself a small, bitter smile before turning the corner. Now, standing in the empty house, he felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. The memories, the secrets, the betrayal. He'd built a life here, or so he'd thought. A home. A family. And in the span of a few weeks, it had all unraveled. The sound of footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. He turned, half expecting to see Emily standing there, her eyes pleading for an explanation. Instead, it was the realtor, a sharp-eyed woman with a clipboard tucked under her arm. "Everything's in order," she said briskly, glancing around the room with satisfaction. "The buyers are thrilled. You've left the place in great condition." Mark nodded absently, his gaze drifting back to the empty space where the couch used to be. He could still picture it, Emily curled up with a book, her legs tucked beneath her, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows across her face. He shook his head, forcing the memory away. "What about the neighbors?" he asked suddenly, his voice low. The realtor raised an eyebrow. "The neighbors? The ones next door. Did they say anything?" She shrugged. "Not to me." "Why? Is there something I should know?" Mark hesitated, then shook his head. "No. Nothing." The realtor gave him a curious look but didn't press further. "Well, if there's nothing else, I'll be heading out. Congratulations on the sale." She extended her hand, and Mark shook it mechanically, her grip firm and impersonal. When she was gone, he was left alone again, the silence of the house wrapping around him like a shroud. He knew he couldn't stay much longer. The buyers would be arriving soon, eager to start their new life in this space that had once been his. But he couldn't bring himself to leave just yet. His phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking the stillness. He pulled it out, the screen lighting up with Emily's name. For a moment, he considered answering, but the thought of hearing her voice, soft and pleading, made his chest tighten. Instead, he silenced the call and shoved the phone back into his pocket. Outside, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway caught his attention. He moved to the window, peering through the blinds as the young couple climbed out of their car, their excitement palpable even from a distance. The woman, his replacement, was laughing at something her partner had said, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Mark felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name. Regret? Anger? Maybe both. He turned away from the window, his footsteps echoing in the empty room as he made his way to the front door. He paused on the threshold, glancing back one last time. The house looked so different now, sterile, impersonal. Whatever warmth had once filled its walls was gone. Mark stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind him with a finality that made his chest ache. The sun was high in the sky, the air warm and heavy with the promise of summer. He took a deep breath, the scent of freshly cut grass filling his lungs, and climbed into his car. As he drove away, he caught a glimpse of Jack's house in his rearview mirror. The man was standing on the front porch, his arms crossed, watching Mark with an unreadable expression. Emily was nowhere to be seen. Mark tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his jaw clenching. He didn't know where he was going, and he didn't much care. All that mattered was putting as much distance between himself and this place as possible. The house, the memories, the betrayal, they were all behind him now. And he wasn't looking back. Mark's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he drove, the weight of the past few days pressing down on him like a storm cloud. The road stretched out ahead, winding through a quiet suburban neighborhood that seemed almost surreal in its normalcy. He didn't know where he was going, just that he needed to keep moving. But then, something caught his eye. Up ahead, a young couple strolled along the sidewalk, their hands clasped tightly together. The girl laughed, tossing her head back with a carefree ease that made Mark's chest ache. The boy grinned, bumping her shoulder playfully, and she leaned into him as they walked. Their laughter carried through the open window of Mark's car, mingling with the soft hum of the engine. Mark stared at them, his heart pounding in a way he couldn't quite explain. There was something about them, something alive. He hadn't felt that in so long. He pulled over to the side of the road, the tires crunching against the gravel as his car came to a stop. His breath was shallow, his palms damp against the steering wheel. He didn't know why he was stopping. He didn't even know these people. But he couldn't look away. The girl's hair caught the sunlight, shining like gold, and the boy's smile was so wide it seemed to light up the entire street. They were a world apart from the emptiness Mark had just left behind. Mark stepped out of the car, the door closing with a soft thud behind him. He leaned against the hood, watching them from a distance. They were closer now, their voices carrying fragments of conversation that Mark couldn't quite piece together. He didn't want to intrude, but he couldn't bring himself to leave either. The girl glanced his way, her eyes meeting his for the briefest of moments before she turned back to the boy. Mark felt a flicker of something, embarrassment, curiosity, but he stayed where he was, rooted to the spot. "Do you think he's okay?" the girl asked, her voice low but just loud enough for Mark to overhear. The boy shrugged, glancing over his shoulder at Mark. "Dunno. He's just standing there." Mark's cheeks burned, but he didn't move. He could feel their curiosity now, their attention shifting from each other to him. He should say something, but the words lodged in his throat. "Hey," the girl called out, her voice friendly but cautious. "You lost or something?" Mark hesitated, then shook his head. "Just taking a break." The girl tilted her head, studying him with a curious gaze. "You look like you've had a rough day." Mark let out a dry laugh, running a hand through his hair. "You could say that." The boy stepped forward, his hands tucked into his pockets. "Need help with anything?" "We're just walking, but..." Mark shook his head again, forcing a smile. "No, I'm fine. Just thinking." The girl nodded slowly, her expression softening. "Thinking's good. Sometimes." Mark's smile faded as he looked at them. They were so young, so full of life. He felt old standing there, weighed down by everything he'd been carrying. But there was something about their presence, something that made the heaviness feel just a little lighter. "You're lucky," Mark said suddenly, the words slipping out before he could stop them. The girl blinked, her brow furrowing. "Lucky?" Mark gestured vaguely between them. "To have each other. It's rare." The boy glanced at the girl, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, I guess we are." The girl's cheeks flushed pink, and she elbowed the boy gently. "Don't get cocky." Mark chuckled, the sound surprising even himself. It felt foreign, like a language he hadn't spoken in years. "Enjoy it," he said quietly. "Don't take it for granted." The girl nodded, her gaze steady. "We won't." Mark looked away, his eyes drifting to the horizon where the sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky. The air felt cooler now, the warmth of the day fading into something softer. He didn't know why he'd stopped here, why he'd felt so drawn to these strangers. But for the first time in days, he felt something other than anger and emptiness. "Well," Mark said finally, pushing off the hood of his car. "I should get going." The girl smiled, her eyes kind. "Take care of yourself." Mark nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You too." He climbed back into the car, the engine purring to life as he pulled away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, he saw the couple resume their walk, their hands finding each other once more. Mark's chest tightened, but this time, it wasn't pain. It was something else, something he couldn't quite name. He drove on, the road stretching out before him like an uncharted map. He didn't know where he was going, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he might be heading somewhere worth arriving. Mark's car hummed steadily as the scenery shifted from sprawling suburbs to open countryside. The road stretched far ahead, framed by rolling hills and clusters of trees that swayed in the breeze. He hadn't planned to stop until he found himself passing a weathered sign that read, "Welcome to Maplebrook, population 1,200. Something about the name tugged at him, a quiet curiosity that nudged him off the highway and onto a narrow, tree-lined road leading into the heart of the town. The streets were quaint, lined with brick storefronts and colorful awnings. A bakery emitted the scent of fresh bread, and a small bookstore displayed stacks of weathered tomes in its front window. Mark slowed the car, taking it all in. It felt like a place frozen in time, untouched by the chaos he'd left behind. He parked near a diner, its neon sign flickering faintly as he stepped out. The air was crisp, carrying the faint tang of autumn. Mark adjusted his coat and walked inside, greeted by the sound of a bell above the door and the low murmur of conversation. The diner was warm, filled with the comforting aroma of coffee and fried food. A waitress with a bright smile and a name tag reading, "Sue," approached. "Sit anywhere you like, hon," she said, gesturing to the row of booths along the wall. Mark chose a seat by the window, glancing at the menu while Sue poured him a cup of steaming coffee. He hadn't realized how hungry he was until the scent of bacon and eggs wafted from the kitchen. As he waited for his order, his eyes wandered across the diner. A man sitting at the counter caught his attention, someone familiar, though Mark couldn't place him right away. The man turned slightly, and recognition hit like a bolt. "Logan?" Mark murmured under his breath. Logan glanced over, his eyes narrowing before widening in surprise. "Mark? Is that you?" Mark stood, a smile breaking across his face as he approached. "It's been years. What are you doing here?" Logan laughed, standing to clasp Mark's hand in a firm shake. "I live here now. Took over my dad's hardware store after he retired." "What brings you to Maplebrook?" Mark hesitated, the weight of the past few weeks pressing on him. "Just passing through," he said vaguely. "Thought I'd stop and grab a bite." Logan studied him for a moment, his gaze thoughtful. "You're welcome to stay a while. This town's got a way of growing on you." Mark nodded, unsure of what to say. Logan gestured to the booth Mark had been sitting in. "Join me?" It's not every day an old friend shows up in town. They returned to the booth, Sue delivering Mark's plate of food with a cheerful, "Here you go. Let me know if you need anything else." The two men fell into easy conversation, reminiscing about their college days and catching up on the years that had passed. Logan's life seemed simple but fulfilling, running the store, coaching the local Little League team, and enjoying the quiet rhythm of small-town life. As the conversation deepened, Mark found himself opening up about Emily, about Jack, about the betrayal that had upended his world. Logan listened without judgment, his expression sympathetic. "Sounds like you've been through hell," he said finally. "But you know, Maplebrook might be just the place to start over. Mark raised an eyebrow. How so? Logan leaned back, a mischievous glint in his eye. We've got an opening at the store, actually. Dad's gone, and I could use an extra set of hands. Pay's decent, and you'd get to be part of the community. Plus, he added with a grin, there's a little cottage for rent just down the road. Quiet, cozy, perfect for someone looking to rebuild. Mark considered the offer, a spark of hope igniting in his chest. I don't know, Logan. It's been a long time since I've worked in retail. You'll pick it up, Logan assured him. And hey, it's better than driving aimlessly with nowhere to go, right? Mark chuckled softly, nodding. You've got a point. They finished their meal, and Logan insisted on showing Mark the cottage. As they walked down the quiet street, the air filled with the sound of rustling leaves and distant laughter from a nearby park. The cottage was charming, with ivy trailing up its stone walls and a small garden out front. Logan unlocked the door, stepping inside. What do you think? Mark followed, taking in the cozy interior, wooden beams, a fireplace, and windows that let in streams of golden light. It felt like a place where he could breathe again, where the past might loosen its grip. It's perfect, he admitted. Logan clapped him on the shoulder. Then it's yours. You start at the store tomorrow, no excuses. Mark laughed, gratitude swelling in his chest. Thanks, Logan. I owe you one. You'll pay me back by keeping me company, Logan teased. And maybe helping me win the town's softball tournament next summer. Mark grinned, feeling a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in weeks. Deal. They walked back toward the diner, the sun dipping low in the sky and painting the town in hues of orange and pink. For the first time in what felt like forever, Mark felt like he was exactly where he needed to be.